Hi everybody, I'm Gina Rodriguez and I'm doing an oral presentation today on The Elephant Vanishes by Haruki Murakami. In particular, I wanted to analyze how Murakami uses metaphor to tell his stories, and those stories tend to be relatable to the reader as well, which makes it a very interesting read. What Murakami usually does is he will write his stories from the first person point of view, and he will use his narrator, who tends to, in The Elephant Vanishes, in some of his stories, tends to be unnamed, and I think he really leaves them unnamed so that it becomes easier for, the reader to be able to put themselves in that situation, and what he does is he makes his narrator an ordinary person, again, I think to make relatable to the reader. And so they're this ordinary person who's also lonely or not exactly happy with where they are in life and how things are going in their life. Not that they're particularly bad, but just things could be better. And then what he does with the narrator is he puts an event in the story that they're dealing with or seeing, and that event tends to be, in comparison to the narrator, an extraordinary or unexplainable type of event, and then he'll use that story or that situation, that event rather, to compare it to the internal problem or situation that the narrator is facing. In particular, for The Elephant Vanishes, what he does there is he has the ordinary person, the narrator, speaking about how his day is just so, repetitive, the same thing. He reads the newspaper in the morning from start to finish, nothing great going on in his life. And then, of course, he finds out about the elephant in the town that has disappeared. And not only did the elephant disappear, but the keeper disappeared. So the narrator starts telling the story involving that situation or that event. He later, goes on to say that the elephant has his keeper, and they seem to have a rather intimate relationship once they're behind doors. But of course, the public sees them just as an elephant and a keeper. But in actuality, he kind of explains the elephant and his keeper to be more like they were alone, they were old, they were ordinary. Nobody really thought about them or cared about them. In fact, the elephant was more or less forced to be kept by the city because, they couldn't kill him, and none of the other parks wanted to buy him or exotic keepers wanted to buy him, so he stayed in the town. And of course, the keeper is this old man that you can't even tell how old he is anymore because he's already reached that age, and of course he doesn't have any family or anything like that. That's talked about in the story. So anyways, the narrator goes on to say how they have each other and their intimate relationship, basically they're unified. And then he later talks about how the elephant actually and the keeper vanished, and his story seems to be one that's not realistic, but because he saw it, he's able to tell it. And what he says is that the elephant and the keeper, the elephant actually gets smaller, and he and the keeper, they're about the same height or the same size, because he said he's not sure if it's really the elephant got smaller or the keeper got bigger, but of course they're the same size, and naturally the elephant did get smaller though, but so of course there's that balance there for them. Either way, they have each other. Of course, the narrator's going on talking about this, but he's saying how he's telling this story to the editor, but prior to him telling her about how the elephant and his keeper vanished, he went on saying how, of course, he met the girl and she's by herself, he's by himself, so it's like, okay, two people who are alone, and she expressed a lot of interest in him, so they go on having this rather intimate conversation, And then, of course, the story of the elephant is brought up, and he goes on and decides to tell her. He hasn't told anyone the story, of course, because he didn't think it sounded very realistic, but because he felt a connection between him and the girl, he went on to tell her the story about the old man and the old elephant and how they vanished. And after he finishes telling it, he realizes that the story doesn't seem to sound very realistic. In fact, it's totally against his pragmatic lifestyle. But nonetheless, he told her, and of course the result was the girl more or less up and left, and he never really heard from her again. So when you compare the story of the elephant and the narrator, you can more or less say that eventually, if you think about time and you think about age, eventually, if you compare time with death, I mean, you're just going to die eventually. And so, of course, whether you're old or young, you can either die with someone, something, which would be like the elephant and the man. They die together, they vanish together, or you can vanish alone. And in his case, he had the opportunity to possibly, live his life, spend time with someone else, but he's so into his realistic life or whatever reality that he's alone again. So I guess the metaphor here that Murakami is saying, is you can either live your life with someone or without someone or something, but you're going to die, so maybe you probably should just live your life. That's what I think he's probably suggesting in this story. But I don't know. I thought that was the metaphor going on there. If anybody has any questions or thoughts, let me know. Thank you.